Now, it was the biggest anticlimax. All the warnings, all the doomsday predictions, in the end, nothing happened. It was just another Wednesday in Ukraine, enemy at the gates, but no closer to war. So what exactly happened? America was confident. Their media said Putin would invade today, that 50,000 people would die. If you ask the Russians, the opposite is happening. Russian troops are returning to their barracks. So did US intel fail like it did in Iraq and Afghanistan, or was all of this panic fake? Ukraine kept rejecting America's dire predictions. When US media said Wednesday was the day of invasion, Ukraine turned the narrative around and said that Wednesday would be the day of unity for them. A gigantic 200-meter-long Ukrainian flag was unfurled. President Volodymyr Zelensky tried to boost morale with this message.
Але об'єднує нас єдине бажання жити.
We are all united by a wish to live in peace, to live a happy life with our families, parents and children. We have the full right to all of this, because we are at home here in Ukraine.
В Україні. І ніхто наш
Nobody will love our home as much as we do, and nobody can defend our home as we can. I wish you a happy Unity Day, my blue yellow ones, a happy day of unity of Ukraine, in the east and west, in the south and north.
захід, південь, північ.
I have to say it's an excellent piece of propaganda. Turn your doomsday into a celebration. Does this mean the Russian threat is gone? Well, not yet. On Tuesday, Ukraine was targeted in a cyber attack. Their armed forces and defense ministry websites were hacked. So were 2 Ukrainian banks. In total, around 10 websites were inaccessible. Who hacked them? The obvious candidate is Russia. Ukraine is accusing them of quote-unquote little dirty tricks. The Kremlin, of course, has denied the allegation. Now, cyber attacks, we know, are a Russian speciality. Plus, it was one of Putin's unconventional options to attack Ukraine. But this hacking was not large enough. A couple of teenagers in a dormitory could have done this. So if Putin is indeed going the cyber way, chances are there will be more hackings, more substantial hackings. What about the conventional war? On that, Russia is sending mixed signals, mixed messages. Vladimir Putin says he does not want confrontation. He is ready to begin negotiations with the West.
Do we want war or not? Of course not. That is why we have offered our proposals to start the negotiation process, which should lead to an agreement of providing equal security for everybody, including our country.
Do his actions, in fact, match his words? Well, both yes and no. Some Russian troops are returning to their barracks. Take this video, for instance. It shows Russian tanks and equipment leaving Crimea. We have another one. Tanks being loaded onto railway carriages. Looking at these pictures, it seems that Vladimir Putin is right. Maybe he does not want to fight after all. But remember, this is wartime. As they say, truth is the first casualty of war. Both sides are pushing propaganda. Both sides are building narratives. So you cannot take these pictures at face value. I'll give you 2 reasons why. A, these were all published by the Russian Defense Ministry. We cannot verify them independently. And B, the escalation has not stopped everywhere. Russian fighter jets are still practicing maneuvers in Belarus. Russian warships are still holding drills in the Black Sea. And Belarus is firing nuclear-capable ballistic missiles. So the threat is very much alive. Putin may be pulling back some troops, but he's still keeping Ukraine guessing. And this propaganda game has Joe Biden in a bind. His intel reports are all over the place. First, the US said Putin would attack on Wednesday. Then they said an attack was imminent. Now Biden says an invasion is quote-unquote distinctly possible.
Analysts indicate that they remain very much in a threatening position. And the fact remains, right now, Russia has more than 150,000 troops encircling Ukraine and Belarus and along Ukraine's border. An invasion remains distinctly possible.
How the mighty fall. The CIA once toppled regimes for fun. Their spies tricked world leaders and warlords. Today, they stand exposed. As it turned out, American intelligence was wrong. Russia did not invade on Wednesday. In fact, their posture is changing. At least some of Russia's soldiers are returning home. Does the West admit its mistake now? Well, not at all. In fact, they're sticking to their guns. The NATO chief says he has seen no de-escalation on the ground.
I heard the signs from Moscow about readiness to continue diplomatic efforts, but so far we have not seen any de-escalation on the ground. On the contrary, it appears that Russia continues the military build-up.
This is a crucial point for Ukraine. Putin seems to have ruled out war. Instead, he's turning his focus to a face-saving strategy, and that strategy is Donbas. He's got a couple of options. Option number one, recognize 2 breakaway republics in eastern Ukraine. Russian lawmakers are already asking him to do this. And on Tuesday, he dropped a hint. Putin called the situation in Donbas a genocide.
The liberty to say that according to our estimates, what is happening in Donbas is now genocide.
When Europe talks about genocide, it is a serious matter. They've seen Nazi concentration camps, Stalinist gulags. Does Donbas fit such a description? Most experts agree it does not. Having said that, it reveals Putin's thought process. There will be popular support for recognizing the 2 republics. But it will also end the peace talks. The Minsk Accord would be dead. Option number 2 for Putin, fight a proxy war through the insurgents. Moscow is already doing this. All Putin has to do is turn up the scale, give them more weapons, training and funds. Again, this would bleed Ukraine. At the same time, there would be no full-scale war. What Vladimir Putin decides could shape Europe's future. NATO is desperate to end the standoff. Joe Biden is promising to never place missiles in Ukraine, even if it joins the NATO. Now is the time for Putin to be pragmatic. Last time around, his demands made no sense. A veto on Ukraine joining the NATO and no NATO presence in Eastern Europe. That's what Putin was asking for, and those demands were designed to be rejected. This time, though, he must be more practical. Propose something both sides can agree on. As for NATO, they must give up their expansionism. They must stop recruiting Russia's neighbors. Just think about it. Why is Ukraine eager to join the NATO? Because it fears Russia, because it wants NATO protection. If the Russian threat disappeared permanently, would Ukraine still want to join the NATO? We're talking about defense commitments here. Big military spending. Does Kiev really want all of this? This may or may not be the first sign of de-escalation, but we can say one thing for sure. The door to diplomacy is not ajar anymore. It is opening wide. The key is to remember that this is not Russia versus America. This is Russia versus Ukraine. Any diplomatic agreement must include Kiev. If not, we'll be back to square one next winter. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.